Now, the dot-com bubble is known for some pretty massive company failures, and one of the most notable of them was Webvan, an online grocery delivery service that was born in 1999. Webvan was supposed to revolutionize the way people bought food, delivering any product they desired right to their doorstep in just 30 minutes. It was going to be one of the biggest companies to come out of the dot-com era. The new way people would buy groceries, it was going to be revolutionary. That's at least what the founder, Louis Borders, thought. This idea would soon catch the attention of Silicon Valley venture capitalists who without a second thought invested $396 million in his venture. And as if that wasn't enough, Webvan raised an additional $375 million in one of the largest initial public offerings in history for an internet startup. Louis already felt like the next Bill Gates. According to Louis, Webvan was going to revolutionize the way people bought food. But as we'll soon find out, the only thing this man revolutionized was the way $800 million can evaporate in the record time of 2 years. Yep, Webvan would become one of the most epic failures of the dot-com era. So much so that business schools still analyze its story as a manual on how not to run a company. But before we start bashing on the downfall of Webvan, we first need to understand the madness that was the dot-com bubble. As technology started to become the next big thing, we witnessed a brutal shift from the real world to the digital world. Suddenly, everyone was glued to the internet. The World Wide Web became the primary choice for communication, entertainment, and business. If you were an entrepreneur at that time, having your business up on the World Wide Web began to be just as important as having a physical location. When more and more people started using the internet, they quickly realized that they didn't even have to leave their house because everything that they could ever want was on the interwebs. The web was like a modern fairy godmother of business, making everything happen as if by magic. But it's not the first time in history that a new, disruptive technology came along and changed everything. And when this happens, investors are often the first people to start pouring money into these businesses with hopes of generating some healthy returns. The problem is that most of the time, these investments are made way too early and they're just based on pure speculation. But that's the game these investors are in. And that's why it's not uncommon for a new bubble to inflate every time a new and disruptive technology arrives. And back in the mid-90s, the biggest bubble that inflated was the dot-com bubble. A technological revolution, yes, but back then, internet business models had no idea how to make money with it. Many didn't even have a business model, just a vague idea of, well, we'll make money eventually. All they cared about was getting the traffic, and the rest would figure itself out later. Plus, the economy was in good shape with low interest rates, so money was freely flowing in the stock market. Investors could easily borrow money to keep investing, and since everything seemed to be going up, these investors weren't scared to get into a little debt. These investors were willing to throw money at any startup with just a basic website. And so, success stories on the internet multiplied. People smelled of easy money, big and small investors alike. Everyone jumped on the bandwagon of buying shares in dot-com companies without a second thought. It didn't matter if those companies were generating profits or even had a business plan. The speculative frenzy caused the valuations of these dot-com companies to soar to insane prices, completely disconnected from any business fundamentals. Many were just ideas, pure smoke, yet they were worth more than companies with years in the market. It was an obvious bubble, but as money flowed abundantly, no investor wanted to admit the reality. When the year 2000 arrived, a harsh reality hit them like a bucket of cold water. It became evident that many of these dot-com companies were not even going to come close to meeting expectations. And to top it off, interest rates began to rise, many investors started to get nervous, and what do investors do when they get nervous? Well, they sell their shares to salvage whatever profits they can before disaster strikes. So suddenly, many of these investors all started selling at the same time. And that's when everyone realized that this bubble was about to burst. Panic spread through the markets and the price of dot-com stocks began to plummet. And this chain reaction was made even worse by the super speculative nature of these investments in these dot-com companies. For many of these companies, there was no soft landing when their stocks crashed. It was devastating not only for the companies, but also for their employees who got kicked to the curb when the dot-coms went belly up. Many dot-com companies seen as the future filed for bankruptcy, leading to massive massive layoffs across the tech industry. Suddenly, all these companies that had blown cash on marketing and rapid expansion realized that they were more broke than college kids after spring break. So now that we've set the tone, let's find out how Webvan was the biggest company failure to come out of the dot-com bubble. The company was founded in 1997 by Louis Borders, a serial entrepreneur who had already come up on a nice bag after selling his first company, Borders Bookstore. After cashing out from selling Borders, Louis decided it was time to head to Silicon Valley and do a little gambling in the dot-com casino. He was an entrepreneur at heart, but this man didn't know a thing about the grocery industry, and neither did the other executives. Still, when he saw the dot-com boom, he knew he had to shoot his shot. Louis was about to make the biggest bet of his life, but the house always wins. Imagine it's the 1990s, you're just dying to get a big fat burger in your mouth, but you just can't peel yourself off the couch after indulging in a little too much Seinfeld. Your only option was to hop in your gold Toyota Camry and head right down to your local store. Well, luckily, Louis Borders was about to change the game, and along came Webvan, an online grocery delivery service straight to your doorstep. So when you didn't want to ditch your Blockbuster and chill session for a run to the supermarket, you'd simply log into Webvan and boom, groceries at your door in a jiffy. It was like having your own giant pantry and delivery fleet all in one convenient spot. Webvan was a real trailblazer and an absolute casualty to the early internet days. It represented a world of possibilities for e-commerce when it launched, but that excitement would prove a short life. By 1999, online shopping was taking the dot-com world by storm. Everything was available with just a few clicks. So Webvan gave people the power to stock their fridges right from their giant desktop computers in their dimly lit living rooms. Just order your TV dinners and have it dropped at your door in under 48 hours. Now you already know that Louis was no newbie entrepreneur. Early on, he tapped into something called the Retail Intelligence System. This gave him insights into consumer behavior, and that helped our guy Louis shape Webvan services to best please their customers. Originally, he wanted to sell more than just food, but decided to stay focused in Webvan's early days. It wasn't until 2000 that Louis eventually expanded the product line beyond groceries, and with nearly $400 million raised by 1999, Webvan was locked and loaded for a successful launch, or so he thought. So with these funds in his pocket, Louis went on a nice spending spree to get Webvan off the ground. We're talking building giant warehouses for online order fulfillment, buying up delivery vans, and hiring staff like it was going out of style. These 350,000 square feet beastly warehouses stored and kept products fresh before sending them out for delivery. And webbing it all together was the Webvan website, where you could happily shop for groceries in your underwear. And by June 1999, they somehow transformed this crazy idea into an actual business. But there was a catch. Webvan was super expensive to run, with plans to open up 36 warehouses across the US, and we're talking $30 million per warehouse, a $1 billion deal signed by Louis. This would just be the beginning of the end for Webvan. However, since the first part of the purchasing process would be automated through the website, Webvan was launched with the idea that labor costs would be low, making the rest of its infrastructure profitable. A single worker could assemble 450 grocery items per hour, which was almost 20 times more productive than a shopper in a physical store. And because these deliveries were made from local stations, transit time was reduced, ensuring orders arrived on time every time. Well, that's at least what they hoped anyway. In their first 6 months, they managed to rake in $13.3 million in sales. Sounds good, right? Except for the fact that it cost them $144.5 million to make that $13 million. I hate to break it to you, Louis, but that's not looking too good. But compared to the other competition, little Webvan was doing alright for themselves. One outfit in particular, HomeGrocer.com, who were really struggling, only pulled in $10 million that same year. But it wasn't all bad news. By the end of 1999, Webvan had acquired Home Grocer and expanded across 4 more areas of San Francisco, and as a result, they scored the loyalty of a whopping 47,000 customers. Things were looking up, but then in April 2000, Webvan really started cranking it up a notch. Suddenly, they were offering over 20,000 unique items on their site, not only just groceries either. I'm talking flowers, books, medication, office supplies, and even pet food. They had their fingers in every pie. And with changes like that, the growth was extremely fast, and as we'll soon find out, it was probably a bit too fast. In May 2000, Webvan expanded to Atlanta, and by early 2001 they were in Texas while continuing to add more household, baby, and kids items. They wanted to be the #1 online distributor in the US. However, they didn't realize that stretching too thin could backfire. Everything seemed fine for Webvan until the first of many disasters hit, snatching their premature victory song. Believe me, there was no coming back from the mess they had made. But if they could have cut back on unnecessary spending, focused on minimizing losses instead of piling them higher and higher, maybe even gone back to the basics instead of jumping headfirst into the deep end. And for the love of God, someone should have taken a good look under the hood before dumping millions and millions into building fancy new warehouses. Then, and only then, maybe Webvan could have worked out. From Webvan's failure, we can pinpoint a couple main reasons, the first being too much, too soon. These fools expanded like crazy without even testing the waters first, just jumped right into building these massive $30 million warehouses all over the place. But get this, they didn't even do a test run of the first one. Nope, just straight to construction without figuring out if they even had it worked out properly. All that cash down the tubes that could have been saved with a little trial and error. The next major error is they forgot to do their homework. Anyone who's taken Econ 101 knows grocery profits are smaller than my attention span, and we're talking under 5% on average. But our pals at Webvan didn't do their research. Turns out none of the big wig suits had any real experience in the grocery game. Maybe if they took a second to study up, they wouldn't have been so shocked by the thin margins. And when it came to expectations, Webvan failed miserably. In 1999, most of their orders, a whole 70%, came from returned customers, and the average order hit about $71, not too shabby, right? Well, by midway, they'd raked in $4.2 million in sales. Things were looking up, they thought. Turns out that these warehouses were only operating at 20% of its full potential. And to top it off, out of the 6.5% of local folks who gave their service a whirl, a meager 3.2% came back for seconds. Their popularity was in a freefall, and a large amount of customers weren't happy with their service anymore. Delivery costs were too high, and the scheduling time for deliveries exceeded what customers were willing to wait for. Webvan had reached their tipping point. They couldn't even sustain their own customers or their business anymore. And it's really no surprise when you think about it. And as they kept expanding their product lines, those inefficiencies only got more out of hand. But that's not even the worst part. Their big expansion plan required an army of over 10,000 employees in just 3 short years. Do you have any idea how much payroll for that many people would cost? I'd say around $400 million per year. There's no way little Webvan could cover that without having way more profits in the bank. Expanding to new markets was supposed to make up for their infrastructure costs, but this ended up doing more harm than good. When your business is already circling the drain from supply costs, you might want to rethink putting all your eggs in one basket, you know what I'm saying? So they might not have came out on top in the online market, but boy, they secured the gold medal and lost leading. $1.2 billion in expired capital. You gotta hand it to them for setting records, even if it wasn't the kind that they wanted. But luckily, their blunders did not go to waste. Webvan paved the way for services like Amazon Fresh and Instacart to succeed where they failed. Turns out Instacart was smart. Instead of building expensive-ass warehouses, they used their retailer partners' existing inventories. Just one of the ways they learned from Webvan's screw-ups. And Amazon themselves was so impressed they hired some of Webvan's executives to develop Amazon Fresh. And when that Kiva robotic tech helped make Webvan barely viable, Bezos bought it for $775 million. Perhaps Webvan's problem was being too optimistic about its earnings, hoping for profitability too quickly, and investing a lot of money as a result. But it's safe to say that while Webvan, the company's gone, their legacy lives. Because what would life be if we actually had to leave our houses and make real human contact just to get groceries? I don't even want to know.